Curious if someone in your life is concealing their past? When it comes to uncovering hidden details, traffic violations, criminal records, or even updated contact info, Truthfinder has you covered. Truthfinder allows you to dig deep with confidential background checks, ensuring the people you meet online are who they claim to be. If you're swiping on dating apps, you should be checking them out on Truthfinder too. Head to truthfinder.com/podcast to claim your special deal. That's truthfinder.com/podcasts.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a small-time hustler finds himself stuck between black mob bosses and the robbers who ripped them off. Kevin Hart leads a true all-star cast in the Peacock series Fight Night, the Million Dollar Heist. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And also known as Sweets.
Ooh.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and More Like Ancient Failians podcasts, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, This is Monday's program.
It is.
What's coming up on Thursday's show?
On Thursday, we're going to be talking about the podcast from Wondery and Crooked Media. It's called Empire City, the untold origin story of the NYPD.
All right, looking forward to that. So before we were taping, I heard this rumor that I want to get cleared up. Somehow Laura is morphing into Toby because this all came up because you just bought Laura some recording equipment that's similar to what Toby has. And then they started this conversation about you're turning into him. What's going on with that?
Well, remember during the COVID times, I became a caricature of Laura Bricker?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm becoming a caricature of Toby Ball. Because this summer, for some reason, I've been out investigating subcultures. And we know Toby loves a good subculture. And now I have gone from a UFO festival to a Bigfoot Sasquatch festival. And there is a feud between those subcultures because there's a lot of theories about UFOs and Bigfoot and differing opinions. I wish Toby Ball had been with me, but since I am now kind of like Toby Ball, I took one for the team.
Wait, are there feuds between UFO people and Sasquatch people or within
among
the Sasquatch people and UFO
maybe
people?
within. I think there's some differing opinions about the role that aliens might have had some role in Bigfoot.
Toby's shaking his head.
Covering it up and stuff. I don't know. There was a lot of misinformation, I think. But at the same time, I was like, Toby would love this. I don't know what the next cult sort of thing I can go to would be, but I'm representing Toby.
Well, the good news is we actually have an alien and UFO expert here in Toby Ball.
Yeah.
Can you speak to this feud, Toby?
Well, if you ever watched the $6 Million Man Bigfoot episodes, it turns out that he's actually a robot from a UFO, which I think is probably the best evidence for that actually being the case.
That TV show, that definitely not documentary TV show?
Yeah, with Lee Majors.
I actually remember that episode.
It's got some good footage. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen a little bit about it. It just strikes me as weird and incorrect. But you're talking about two things that probably don't exist, and what their relationship is with each other is going to be really, really hard to define. But, whatever floats your boat, if people want to debate it, whether Bigfoot is from a UFO or he's just some large man ape wandering around in the forest.
Yeah.
Both things can be true.
That's your prerogative.
Yeah, right,
It's yeah.
This actually reminds me of something I was hoping to talk about in the after show about the new definition of civil discourse that I've decided to use, which is kind of about things that may or may not be true. Kevin, do we have time to talk about that
Absolutely.
in the after show?
I don't have another topic, so thanks
perfect.
for reminding me to pick one. Yeah.
Well, because that was sort of the approach that Lance and I have taken when we go to these subcultures. We're like, we're going to just engage in civil discourse with these folks, even though we don't agree with them. And we're trying not to make fun of them, but we're also like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is out there.
Now, if you go to those things with the idea that you're going to debate or debunk people, you're getting yourself
We're going to
set
understand.
up for a very, very miserable time.
That's right.
Going to understand. And I met some true believers. True believers.
There are some
Toby.
certain true crime cases that are like that too. And I've been trying to figure out why some cases, like, there's no way to be civil about them, and other ones, it's fine. And I think I've decoded it, and that's what we're going to talk about in the after
Oh, is that
show.
what we're going to talk about? Because I have my own theories.
Okay. All right. Okay, so Kevin, should we talk about the thing we're talking about?
Let's do that.
All right. Let's drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
I got everything you need. I got the venue. I got the goddamn women. Yeah, more importantly, I got the goddamn vision. Ain't nobody gonna see shit the way I see it. All I need from you is Frank's blessing and his Rolodex.
A small-time Atlanta numbers runner named Chicken Man is given a big-time opportunity. Throw a party for all the bosses of the Black Mafia after Muhammad Ali's comeback fight. But a group of robbers holds up the partygoers, making off with nearly $1 million in cash and jewelry.
How come nobody told me who the fuck we were robbing? Your boy Emerson ain't tell you? What? I thought y'all was tight. And that's why he wanted to leave. So he could have a fucking alibi. Seems like the only thing left to do now is to keep them from finding out who he is.
Detective JD Hudson is tasked with finding the violent robbers. That is, unless Black Godfather Frank Moten finds them first. Chicken Man finds himself in the crosshairs of both the police and the mob, needing to convince both he had nothing to do with the heist.
Funk, listen to me, man. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of all this.
I don't give a fuck what you're trying to get to, and I don't give a fuck about your bottom. But what I do know is the streets say you are a dead man.
She say what?
Fight Night, the $1 Million Heist from Peacock, is based on the podcast around the 1971 real-life caper. Kevin Hart leads an all-star cast that includes Taraji P. Henson, Don Cheadle, and Samuel L. Jackson. The crime drama goes beyond the holdup, focusing on the characters' dreams of what life in a modern Atlanta could be. Spoiler alert, the series finale of Fight Night is Thursday on Peacock. We're going to be talking about plot points from 7 episodes, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, Laura, if you want atmosphere and set design and like stuff like that, this show is probably for you. Would you not agree?
Can you see I'm like dancing, just sitting here in my chair right now? Like every time a new episode, like I love like the opening credits and I'm like dancing along. I love the set
waka
design.
waka wah wah of the guitar.
Yeah. I love even like the font that they use in the opening credits, the costuming that like everything just captured the feel of that era. But for me, it also kind of captured some of these movies that I had seen in college, like Dolomite, which was like a 70s thing where like a guy much like Chicken Finger.
Chicken Man.
Chicken Man.
Chicken Man.
Chicken
I like to call
Finger.
him Chicken Finger. I kept calling
Yummy.
him Chicken Finger. I'm like,
Why do they call you Chicken Finger?
I like chicken fingers better than Chicken Man.
This is my
But,
son,
like, he gets-
Tender.
Well, it was like that same sort of feel. Like he gets out of prison and like the women are picking him up and he's in his like 1970s car and they're like, again, the costuming and everything. It definitely captured that era, but then it added in some like Ocean's 11 kind of vibes at the same time.
Yeah. Toby, this is a very suspenseful show. It's a violent show. And you ask a very good question in your notes, which I had too. Is it a fun watch? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't really have an answer for it. I mean, I think there's a contrast between like there's a lot of violence and it doesn't happen off screen. And there's also a lot of racism. But at the same time, it does kind of lean in hard on this 70s vibe. There are some funny scenes. And for some of it, there is kind of a fun vibe to it. So I don't know. I kind of have that question. In some ways, maybe that's a good comment for it, is that it's a little more complex than usual. It's not just really serious and dour, but at the same time, it's not a joke, right? So it's a question, and maybe the final episode will help sort of define it.
Well, the one thing that's fun for me in watching this is the basically cast of like Avengers actors that they have assembled here, including 2 like literal
I was going to say
Avengers.
the literal. Yes.
One that actually replaced another one in the Avengers, which was interesting. Don Cheadle actually took over for Terrence Howard, playing, what was that character in the Iron Man movies?
It was the other Iron Man.
Yeah, the other one.
But Samuel Jackson is
also in the Avengers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
he's unrecognizable.
I know. So we have Kevin Hart, we have Taraji P. Henson, Don Cheadle, Samuel L. Jackson, Terrence Howard. In the episode we just watched, Debbie Allen shows up. I mean, it's really incredible, like the unbelievable amount of talent in this series, and talent that's like doing a really good job portraying these characters that are sometimes completely outrageous, caricature type characters could be, but I think the performances are really, really strong. But Kevin, at the beginning of the show, it basically says based on a true story, like sorta. Did you look into that?
I have not yet, but I think a good based on true event story is one that like really makes you want to go back and find out what happened. We missed the podcast Fight Night when it came out, but to me, like now I'm like really intrigued by it. Whether like this TV series is 25% accurate or 85% accurate, I mean, they did do a good job of sort of exploring the narrative possibilities of the situation and the characters involved. Did Chicken Man like really bring his lover home when she got injured? I don't know. Maybe he did, but it's like it makes for a really good set piece. Did the triple cross on Skull Island go the way it did? Did every shooter who shot this? I mean, like, did that shooter actually kill that person? I mean, I don't know. But I find myself when it's really good, you can get both lost in the story and still be like tickled about what might actually have been, so it kind of makes me want to go back and if I can't Google it all, to maybe pick up the podcast again. Well,
the performances lend to that, don't you think, Kevin? I mean, they really, really do, because it's like you just like watching these people do what they do in this series, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, I've got like, some thoughts about some of the different actors, and I don't really want to jump too far ahead, but I think, the one that stands out for me, and I know it stands out for Toby, is this scene between Samuel L. Jackson and Don Cheadle, because this is their only non-superhero appearance together. And so the way this scene was set up, it just seems like it was just luxuriously slow and seemed written for them. And like for this moment, it reminds me of when Al Pacino and Robert De Niro finally meet on screen in the movie Heat, like in this little scene in a diner where they're sitting across from each other. It was very much like that. It's just a very special moment. And I think that they knew it when they crafted it and they shot it. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson is like, kind of invisible behind the wig and the glasses and everything like that, but it still was really strong.
I bet we got more in common than we like to believe.
No, I'm not looking to make no new friends, Mr. Moten. You officially on my radar.
Well, I guess we better make sure we don't run into each other no more.
Now that sounds like a threat.
And that sounds like you think you worthy of being threatened.
It's just the two of them in a room with 2 chairs and a table and nothing else, just acting. They're great actors, and they're just put in a situation where there's no distractions or anything. There's just this conversation. It's far enough into it that you know what sort of the stakes are for them, and you know enough about their personalities at the time to kind of understand where they're coming from as they have this conversation and are sort of trying to manipulate each other, but at the same time realizing that they're not going to really be able to. So it's just sort of this back and forth kind of banter. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of really good scenes in this, but I could see, it kind of felt to me like sometimes, like if you're following a sports team and there's like, that's the game you circle because that's the big game or whatever. And it just kind of felt like in this script, they probably circled that scene. They're like, okay, this is going to be a big deal.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of 2-person scenes in a series that has a huge cast, and the 2-person scenes really do shine. The dialogue is strong. The performance is strong. There's a great series of scenes with Taraji P. Henson and Artrice Johnson in Chicken Man's house because he does drop his mistress off to get his wife to sew up her cut. There's a series of incredible scenes with Taraji P. Henson and Samuel L. Jackson together, sort of playing off one another because their relationship is very, very heightened at the beginning and then kind of like comes down sort of as he's realizing the truth of what happened.
Any property that he buys, he don't have to tell the state.
Get the fuck out of here.
I got my fingers in all kinds of pies.
You know, I heard that exact same line from some little hustler around here.
No, see, what you heard was talk. I got the fucking recipe.
These performances, which are very over the top, become very intimate at times. But let's talk about Kevin Hart's character, Chicken Man, because Laura, he does become... We kind of have two protagonists here, right? We've got Don Cheadle and Kevin Hart, and he becomes sort of this unlikely anti-hero that this thing starts, he's kind of all over the place. But what did you end up thinking about him?
Yeah, I called him the unlikely hero because I found myself rooting for him, even though at one point I'm like, you're dumb enough to bring your mistress home to your wife to have her get stitched up. And then they both share their little anecdotes about how he likes the bad bologna or whatever. But
bitches get stitches, man.
Yeah, exactly. Mistresses get stitches. But I think, we see him in the beginning and he's like the party man about town. He's running this sort of, I don't know, like lottery sort of numbers scheme. And Vivian, his mistress, is helping him out with that. He knows that that's coming to an end, that the actual lottery is coming, and gets involved with this party. And you're kind of watching the party and you're watching like the setup at the party house and the neighbor who's upset. And then he segues into going on the road with the police detective to basically like prove his innocence. I found it so interesting to watch that evolution. And that's when I was like, when he would get in and start questioning some of the witnesses and get better information. Like when there was that scene where they were in the store where the other guys were ahead of them and like were holding the guy up. And then the detective is questioning him and he's like not giving him any intel. And then he's like, smells like apples in here. You making moonshine? Why don't you fucking tell us what you know? And then out comes the accurate information.
You know what that smell is? It's rotten apples. Funny thing is, I don't see a lick of fruit in here, do you? No, you don't, do you? But I see a bunch of sugar. That's right, and Lord knows sugar is for yeast. See, I know how these dry counties work, and I know that you got steel in the back. So what I want to do is let my detective friend here take a little walk around and come out here and bust your ass some moonshine. How does that sound? You fucking hayseed.
Watching that, but at the same time watching as other characters are getting like picked off one by one, I'm like, oh, I hope the chicken finger lives to the end.
The chicken man.
Is it because it's Kevin Hart and he's small in real life? Is that what you're saying? He is wearing very high lifts and shoes in this series so that he looks at like, pretty okay, tall next to his other characters. We know he's very short in real life.
He is.
It
just cracks me up. I don't know. And also, was he the one we saw naked? I was like, oh, he's in pretty good shape.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, ooh.
He didn't call him chicken finger then.
Oh boy.
Drumstick.
So Kevin, one of the podcasts that I oversee has done several episodes about Atlanta or about things that take place in Atlanta. Because Atlanta, the evolution of Atlanta has so many interesting stories about community stuff. It had for instance, first public housing in the United States was in Atlanta. Obviously, Atlanta was awarded the Olympics, and that caused a lot of strife in the city because of land taken by eminent domain and then rapid economic development where land was taken away from people of color. There have been many moments in Atlanta where people of color, Black people, had power that was then kind of taken away from them by white people. It's happened over and over and over again in the city. And this takes place kind of in one of those moments of real promise for the Black community when things are sort of about to turn economically in Atlanta. And that is the setting for this, right? That is the set piece behind which all of this is taking place. How do you think that they use the city here? And do you think it's used to effect here?
Yeah, I mean, it's set in this particular time because this is when the event happened, but it's also, they are making the most out of the idea here that this is a city that is about to become a majority-minority city. And Chicken Man's motivation, like his vision for Atlanta is Black Las Vegas, right? That's his inspiration. And that's how it goes until Frank comes along. You realize he's dreaming bigger. He's dreaming about it being a Black Mecca.
We build our houses, build our businesses, put Black folk in seats of power. Mayor's office, courts, police. We start our own TV stations, our own radio stations. We build movie studios bigger, realer, and blacker than Hollywood.
Much of what Frank preaches about, like what the vision is, does come to pass in Atlanta as far as the political influence and the economic influence and even the movie theaters, studios and things like that. I'd sort of like never considered that maybe one element that got them there was organized crime. That's
corruption runs everything, Kevin.
Corruption runs everything. Right. But I didn't think like, it was Black Godfather who's the one who was like putting seed money in and like trying to, much the way that like the mob, and we'll just call it the Italian mob. I was going to call it the white mob, but the Italian mob goes into Las Vegas. They see the opportunity. They create the city. Just a decade later, bosses of the black mob are like, this is our opportunity. But they were dreaming bigger.
What do you think about the sort of political underpinnings that they sort of talk about here, Toby? Because there is a scene, too, where Frank goes to talk to a state senator about, a land deal, thinking that he's going to be able to charm him the way he's able to charm other people. Obviously, it doesn't work out. But this is a kind of a political show in many ways.
Yeah, so I thought that scene with Frank and the state senator was pretty interesting. And also just kind of knowing what their various realities are. I mean, this black senator, I think is the first black state senator in Georgia since Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
So he's having to deal with the white power structure as sort of a lone voice, whereas Frank seems to sort of live in a largely black criminal world, right? He's sort of the guy who's more or less oversees all these different gangs, or at least is the leader whenever they get together. So it seems like they've got different kind of things that they have to keep in mind when they're trying to get what they want. And in some ways it seemed, I think a really interesting character in all this is Hudson, which is the Don Cheadle character, who I think kind of embodies, he's almost like, I don't want to say he's a metaphor for where Atlanta is, but he's this guy who is clearly a talented detective, and he has sort of the respect for his skill from his superior officer. But at the same time, he can only go so far, right? And he's not even sort of equal to people who should be somewhat junior to him, like a junior detective or whatever. So that when he does get baited by this sort of racist white detective, punches him and knocks him down, like he's the one, it's like badge and gun. And so it's seen that there's sort of limits, like no matter how good he is, there's like a limit to which he can go because he's black. And in some ways, that kind of seems like what's going on with the state senator and with Frank. And Frank is like, this is going to become a black city, and this is going to become as we were saying before, a black Mecca. And I think the state senator is like, all right, like slow your roll. There's other stuff going on here, and you're not calling the shots. So I don't know. It's sort of a complicated time in that history, and I think they deal with it in a way that, kind of addresses the nuances and doesn't turn it into sort of a cartoon version of what it is, but turns it into something where there's people who have different aspirations and different goals, but there's this existing power structure that's going to have to be overcome in order for anybody to kind of get what they want.
Yeah, and I think much of what motivates all the characters, as you say, their aspirations, right? Their dreams, and whether they're like big dreams about Black Mecca or just a dream of climbing up the ladder in the underworld or to get the roof on the church, right? The dreams here are like big and small and personal, but they're always aspirational. Like, I can always achieve something if I'm given the chance. Like, we can give you a great experience for podcasting if you just join us on Patreon.
It's just like that.
It's exactly like that.
I mean, that's just like what's happening in this show. Our Patreon is just like Fight Night.
It kind of is. It kind of is. We're luring you in, and then we're taking all your money at gunpoint.
It's literally not anything like Fight Night.
I think that was probably a better transition to go that way.
Toby's the Kevin Hart of this group here, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm the chicken man.
I think Laura's Silky because they have the same haircut. So, like, one of the things you can get at Patreon, we talk about exclusive podcasts, but like for real, just to remind you that your support on Patreon, you're getting all the stuff that we're giving you, but the real value here is that you're keeping us going, right? Some people have Patreons for their podcast, and I say that's just to put the fuel in their jets, their private jet. This really does the work where it's keeping the four of us churning out exclusive content.
We're a small show.
Yeah, we're a small show, and we're able to do things like bring you Leave It to Bricker. This is Laura Bricker's exclusive podcast, and this time, Laura tries to solve a mystery in Exeter that has to do both with aliens and rabbit nuts.
Did you say rabbit nuts?
Yeah, rabbit nuts. I mean, the UFO part, like we've talked about, but Lara, can you explain how you were traumatized by rabbit genitalia?
Balls?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So I was walking around at the UFO Fest and I saw a lady walking a rabbit on a leash. And I was like, interesting. It brings all sorts. And so as I went over to chat with her about her rabbit and she picked it up, I went, oh, wow, there's a lot of rabbit there that I didn't need to say. I sort of inquired about those parts and why they were still there. And I learned a lot of information that day. However, I still have this picture and sometimes I go places and people say, Bricker, you're not still talking about those rabbit nuts. And I'm like, I can't stop talking about it. Like, why? So if you want to know more about that, you should listen to the episode.
Seemed like a double episode, really, for that. Also, your Patreon support keeps Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast rolling along. Toby, what was the last book that you talked about?
The Wager by David Gran.
And this is a story about sailors who mutiny and then they are not rewarded.
Yeah, well, they wreck and then they're stranded on this island, just like, right at Cape Horn. And then they mutiny and they leave and they go home and they're captured for like 2.5 years and then they're let go again. And it's just like this endless adventure. But anyway, it's a cool book. It's a quick read. Adventures on the High Seas. Would not want to be a sailor in the 1730s, to be honest with you.
No.
Somebody says it, I think Samuel Johnson or somebody else is like, anybody who has a chance to get to prison rather than go to sea should take it, because when you're at sea, it's basically like being on a prison, except you might drown.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good
And you're
quote.
definitely getting scurvy.
Yeah, definitely getting scurvy.
Yeah, which isn't fun either.
Patreon helps Rebecca, keeps her motivated to do episodes of her Karen Reed-themed podcast,
Oh, yeah.
The Readathon.
It's getting wild in Canton.
Yeah, in the last episode, Rebecca explains why a prosecutor is being compelled to testify for the defense in Aiden Carney's case. And also we have our CWO after show where we, the four of us, kick it back, take up a new topic.
It's like the champagne room of the show.
Exactly, but not like it.
Without any exotic dancing.
Yeah, it's not like Sweets and Chicken Man. But Rebecca, tell us what we're talking about on the CWO after show.
Right now in the after show, you can hear our conversation about civil discourse and why it is impossible to have around certain
shut up.
true crime cases.
Shut up.
Why talking about certain true crime cases immediately turns into a giant mess, and I have banned those conversations from our Facebook group.
All right, way to
All
poke
right.
the bear. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
And again, you can help us out by doing all that by going to patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
All right, Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go and fade that music
out right now.
Wow, Kevin, that was in sync with me. I appreciate that. We're very in sync.
For once.
Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I came here to make something of myself.
You want your name up in big, flashy lights.
Before Rosemary's Baby,
I chose you.
evil was born.
They did something to me.
Starring Julia Garner
I need to know what's happening.
and Diane Wiest.
This is a role that you were born to play. Baby's here to stay.
Apartment 7A, now streaming on Paramount Plus, or buy it on digital. Rated R.
So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor right now?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Oh, boy.
So we are kind of officially out of summer. We're into autumn. And now it's time to switch things up, move into a new season. And I think, we got to look right past Halloween. You got to start thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas and cooler, crisper weather.
Yeah.
And that means you got to get your cashmere sweater from Quince, priced from $50.
Yes.
And Rebecca, have you been keeping them afloat with all of your sweaters you've been buying from Quince?
I've got a couple bookmarked right now, Kevin. Right now, my favorite is this very cute kind of cropped, sort of quasi off the shoulder one. It comes in a color called I think it's called strawberry cream. It also comes in a color called moss. And what's held me back, the only thing that's held me back is it wasn't the price, was which one to get. I love Quince so much. The quality of their cashmere for the price is incredible.
Well, I was going to say that, if you could just get all of them, maybe you should.
Wow, thanks.
I'm thinking twice about that right now, actually. So, switching seasons is a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Just go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. quince.com/crime.
Hi, my name's Patrick Adams. You may know me as Mike Ross on the TV series Suits.
And I'm Sarah Rafferty, and I play Donna Paulson on Suits.
And we have a podcast called Sidebar, where every week we watch and discuss an episode of the show.
Because here's the thing, neither of us have really watched it.
That's true, at least until now.
So we're going to cover all 9 seasons,
share behind-the-scenes stories,
and talk to our co-stars and friends like Gina Torres and Aaron Korsh.
So look, if you love Suits, amazing. This podcast is for you.
And if you've never watched Suits, also amazing. You can join us and we'll watch it together.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun. You can find Sidebar on the SiriusXM app, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
All right, so Laura, this show, we talked about it being a period show, right? But like that means the crime is period too. That means like you can stand in a house, do a heist, and people are not like Instagram DMing each other saying like, don't come to this house, there's a heist going on, right? They can just knock on the door and do like, you know, come in with a gun, come in with a gun, come in with a gun over and over and over again. What did you think of that? Like, what did you think of just sort of the way that stuff plays out in this story?
It's kind of like the Dukes of Hazzard or something. You're like,
well, no, it's not like the Dukes of Hazzard.
No, it's not like the Dukes of Hazzard, but you know what I mean? It's like one of these, like, I don't know where that came from. I was just thinking about but like, yeah, like they have like the guy with like the walkie-talkie
It's just like hee-haw.
It's just like... It's like get your G.I. Joes
I don't know
out.
where that came from.
Yeah.
It's just like
Nobody
the whitest show ever made. Keep going, Laura.
It's the South in the 70s. We just need a guy named Cooter. Do we have anybody named that is also a double entendre for genitalia? I mean, we got Chicken Man. Cooter would be. There's
I
one.
know somebody that's nicknamed Cooter.
It's just like the Love Boat.
Anyway.
Oh my God. Just like the Love Boat.
But like I'm watching this and I'm like, this is so low tech. They're like, we're going to drive out into the woods and find this guy out at his camper trailer and see if we can get him on board. And then we're going to like go around to these other places. And then we're going to have the guy with the getaway car that has to like basically put like a piece of fabric over the logo so nobody knows who it is. Like when Toby was saying earlier, like, is this fun to watch? For me, it was kind of fun to watch a low tech crime. I'm like, the stakes didn't seem as high. I mean, until, you know, obviously the black mafia is trying to kill these people. But before that, the stakes don't seem that high. It just seems like it's kind of silly because it's so different than what we are accustomed to seeing right now. And we're seeing it play out in a way that's like, I especially loved when that guy at the trailer in the woods was like going to give his, lady friend a little memento. And he just digs out from under his porch, like his pile of like old jewelry.
His coffee can of jewelry.
His coffee can of jewelry. His little memento can.
Yeah.
But it added sort of, again, that element of making this like, yes, there's like a bigger message here. Yes, there's a lot we can draw like historically if we're looking at this from this time, but also just like, it's kind of a fun kind of heist.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I once went to a Writers on New England stage event here in New Hampshire, and Ann Patchett was the writer. And she was just like, I do everything I can to write books where there are no cell phones because they would be over in like 4 sentences. Like I either set them in the middle of a jungle or at a time when there were no phones because it's just like nothing can happen. Like you can't make anything happen when people can literally text one another and just say, don't go there. Don't do that thing. Like, I'm here. You're there. Like it just doesn't happen. Like life is so boring now. It's just so interesting. So Toby, one of the things that I wonder about this is if the series would have been stronger had a character of Muhammad Ali not been in the series, but this was just sort of around the Muhammad Ali fight. I found the Muhammad Ali scenes very distracting. What about you?
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, I spent more time than I probably should have. Just like, okay, in this scene, like, how would you make it work? Like, how would you make it work in this scene? Yeah, I mean, it's just hard having actors play sort of world historical athletes, you know? I mean, Muhammad Ali, it'd be very hard to find anybody, actor or not, to sort of fill his shoes in a way that seemed realistic. I mean, he's this huge, sort of graceful, like incredibly charismatic guy, and just grabbing an actor who can kind of do his voice doesn't really get there. There's two benefits to that. One is you don't have to like try and pretend this guy's Muhammad Ali. And then the other thing is I didn't really find that arc to be very satisfying, to be honest. There was a couple little arcs that I felt like kind of detracted from the overall quality of the show. You could have done all the things that you needed to do without having him on screen if you want to talk about how divisive he is and stuff. And then the guy who's playing Jerry Quarry, the guy he's fighting, like he just looks like a normal dude. Like he just doesn't look like he has any business being in a boxing ring at all.
That's how they trick you, Toby.
I guess so. It's super tough.
You're out.
But Jerry Quarry did not look like that.
Well, which is wild.
Know, right?
Which is wild because they cast this woman to play Lola Falana that looked fucking exactly like Lola Falana. Oh yeah, I was like, Kevin, look at this casting. Like it's amazing, like how well some of the casting, how good some of the casting was, and then like how off that was. Yeah,
but it's easy, right? If she's an entertainer, it's a lot easier to cast an entertainer when you've got all these entertainers you can cast from. It's very difficult. And it just happens again and again, like the O.J. Simpson stuff. It's like, yeah, you know, you can act like O.J. Simpson, but you don't have the presence that he does. Like these great athletes, they just move differently. They take up room differently. There's just a different aura about them that you can't get with like a normal dude.
Y'all can breathe now. The Black Adonis has arrived. Look, I'm sorry I was tardy, but I ain't scared of the fight. I'm scared of the flight, and that plane was shaking, man.
I mean, here's how I look at that. I mean, if I actually like what Dexter Darden did as far as his Ali. It was more of a bit of a mimicry as opposed to trying to do like a full-on impression. And you're right. I mean, I'll never forget Matt Lauer saying that to Will Smith about his Ali movie. And he said, you do all this stuff, but as soon as you take the robe off, if you don't, it's like movie's over, right? If you don't look like Ali. And I thought really that the purpose of this whole line was to give something in service of Hudson. Because if we don't get to see Don Cheadle as Hudson, this character doesn't come in until the robbery, it's going to feel a little weird. Like, who is this guy now? I thought it was a smart choice to incorporate him somehow in this story. And it's all going around Ali anyway. Like, that's the MacGuffin fight, right? That's the thing that picks this whole thing up. So I was kind of like, as far as, you know, whether or not it was a great job with Ali, I mean, again, we're talking about like what actually happened. Did Muhammad Ali put on a tuxedo and then drive to some impromptu block party in the middle of the night and just like play with the kids and the adults don't talk to him? And then he's going to like get to his private jet and, you know, Lester Maddox has blocked the road. And so he just wants to be able to like threaten him before he leaves. You know, it's like, okay, that stuff might seem a little far-fetched, but I thought that this was more in service of getting the character Hudson on the screen so that by the time he comes into the investigation, we already know something about him.
I like what you said about the physicality, Toby. I kept thinking about that because there was this very silly but very fun like moment when Taylor Swift was playing in London, and that time that Travis Kelce flew over and surprised her, and like somebody random TikToked or tweeted like, I think Travis Kelce is here to surprise Taylor Swift. And they were like, because I just saw him in the smoke shop buying a charger, and I cannot convey to you how large and how much space this person took up. He looked like a regular person, but gigantic. And it was just like, it just really described me like a larger than life human being in a way that like doesn't come through, you know, unless you see them, you know, next to a regular sized person, you know what I mean? And I think Ali is definitely one of those people, gigantic and also charismatic in a huge way that like an imitation sort of falls flat. So Laura, the thing that happens here, right, is that the gang who did the robbery, they realize what they did and who they messed with.
Yeah.
And then that sends these characters in different directions and they make different choices based on their reaction to realizing what they did.
Too late. They realized too late what they did.
But some of them, you know, sort of break batter and some of them try to roll it back. Like, how do you think like that works here?
For me, that was interesting because I was like, okay, this is like, you've had this catalyst, this event, and how are these people all going to react now? And you see, it was particularly like Baby Ray kind of gets sucked into the one group, and now he is definitely doing more than he's ever done before. And he's, you know, trying to put on a good show. He kicks somebody at one point, and you're like, oh, Baby Ray, no, Baby Ray. And then, we have Vivian, who now she's aligning with Samuel L. Jackson's character, the Black Godfather, and goes and has a makeover and her hair's short now. And then next thing you know, she's pitching her services to bring this funeral home on as another sort of enterprise of how they can get into this area with their business. And so you see her, I'm like, okay, so that one wasn't as much of a stretch because she was kind of aligned in the beginning. She's always the support person. She was Chicken Man's support person in his hustle. And now she's like, oh, I'm in this far. I might as well go to the top. And then obviously Chicken Man, who goes from being shit, I organize this party where all this shit goes down, to now he's putting himself in the middle, trying to vindicate himself. I'm like, what would have happened to these characters without this inciting event that happened? Would these people have automatically become more involved in the criminal enterprises and the type of behavior that you're seeing? Or would it have happened later down the road? Who knows? But I mean, I think that was the thing is you're watching and you're like, who's going to survive? Who's going to die? Who is going to outsmart the people that are after them? And then, also watching the reaction of those higher ups, like the Cadillac guy, he was something else with his little white fur coat in the garage. But just seeing the evolution of all those characters and how they all responded to that event, I thought was one of the more interesting parts of this.
Kevin, I have a question for you. I asked you this question while we were watching it. Can you just explain briefly how running numbers works? Because it's kind of an old-fashioned kind of gambling, right?
Yeah.
And how are the numbers picked?
The way the number runner works, you go up and you just have your 3 numbers. He writes it down. There's going to be a numbers pull, and then your number comes up. He comes back and pays you, just like it is. How the numbers get picked kind of varies from place to place. The famous one was the Harlem pool, and I'm not certain how that got picked, but sometimes it's based on, I think it's called the handle. The numbers might be the last 3 digits of the closing stock exchange number, or sometimes it's the last 3 digits of the purse from a horse race. Yeah. So they have a way of picking, I don't want to say an objective, but based on some other kind of thing, some other random number, and that's kind of how it gets played.
Yeah, and then the lottery sort of put it out of business somewhat, right?
Oh, yeah. That was one of the first lotteries. Is let's look at what the mob is doing, and let's just give them a legal version of that. One that's we can say is on the level. So as your lottery historian here, I can tell you that's how that works.
Yes, Kevin's the lottery historian among us. Just like Toby is the ufologist among us.
Yeah. So I can imagine that if you are Chicken Man and this is how you make your living, you're right. The idea of these lotteries, part of it was supposed to be not just to raise money, but part of it was supposed to be to fight crime, right? And get back at the mafia and muscle in on their game. And so somebody like Chicken Man would be motivated to try to find I need a new chapter. I need something to do.
Hi, my name's Patrick Adams. You may know me as Mike Ross on the TV series Suits.
And I'm Sarah Rafferty, and I play Donna Paulson on Suits.
And we have a podcast called Sidebar, where every week we watch and discuss an episode of the show.
Because here's the thing, neither of us have really watched it.
That's true, at least until now.
So we're going to cover all 9 seasons,
share behind-the-scenes stories,
and talk to our co-stars and friends like Gina Torres and Aaron Korsh.
So look, if you love Suits, amazing. This podcast is for you.
And if you've never watched Suits, also amazing. You can join us and we'll watch it together.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun. You can find Sidebar on the SiriusXM app, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
Want to connect with a family member who doesn't speak your language? Then check out the language learning program Rosetta Stone on desktop or as an app. Rosetta Stone is designed to immerse you in the language you're learning through an intuitive process. Plus, the True Accent feature even gives you feedback on your pronunciation. And with a lifetime membership, you have access to all 25 offered languages. Get started today. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50 to get 50% off your lifetime membership now. That's rosettastone.com/pod50 for 50% off.
Your dining room is the heart of your home, where meals are shared and memories are made. At Ashley, you'll find affordable dining furniture in a range of classic and modern styles. Ashley's small space sets and extendable tables are designed to fit beautifully into any space, from cozy breakfast nooks and kitchens to formal dining areas fit for a feast. And with mix-and-match seating options, everyone at your table gets the perfect seat. At Ashley, style is served. Shop in-store or online today.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Fight Night? It's a series on Peacock with an all-star cast. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Fight Night?
I'm mild thumbs up for this. I thought this, I hate to say fun, this was a fun watch. This was a nostalgic watch. There was like great music, great scene setting, costuming. It really captured sort of the feeling of like the 1970s, even right down to the font on the opening credits. The setup was great. The heist was interesting. For me, I think it struggled to keep momentum, and I felt like it could have been a movie instead of a series, and I think it would have had more impact that way. But at the same time, I think there was a great cast. There was a lot of really great performances by that cast. It was just, I felt like the format should have been a movie instead of a series. So that is why it is a mild thumbs up for me.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Fight Night on Peacock?
Yeah, I really like this. I mean, I think there are a few sort of plot lines that weren't as strong as the rest of it, but I think 90% of it I thought was really strong. The acting is great. You know, the sense of place and time is excellent. There's enough going on to keep you kind of in suspense. You know, I'm not a big Kevin Hart guy. In general, he is awesome in this. Like, he really has the sort of charisma of this, you know, medium time player, I guess, in Atlanta. And he's just like one of 7 or 8 like outstanding performances. But he really stood out to me just because I haven't really connected with stuff that he's done in the past, but in this he's incredible. So anyway, yeah, it's a solid thumbs up. I enjoyed this a lot.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm going thumbs up on this. I thought that this was really great when based on true event story comes along, and that not only are you enjoying the dramatic version, but you're like all of a sudden like really intrigued about the real life version. I think that's always a great sign. This is a story that comes from a strong Black creative endeavor, Black artists, and they give a real sense of that community in that time, telling a great story through their lens. And I thought that made for a really strong entertainment. There's some really fantastic performances here. I love the scene with Samuel L. Jackson and Don Cheadle, and like these are like some great actors that got great material. And as you said, even Kevin Hart is a super surprise here in this role. So I thought that, you know, this was wonderful, and I'm going to recommend this to everybody. So thumbs up for me.
Yeah, thumbs up for me too, largely because of the performances in this. The cast is just incredible. And it is so freaking great to see a series that is like a mostly Black cast, like where every central person is a Black character, and then most of the like ancillary characters are also Black. There's so many great women in this series too, playing like small roles sort of at the start and then sort of throughout, sort of peppered throughout. It's great. And I will tell you, we think of Samuel L. Jackson as like one of those actors. It's like Samuel L. Jackson playing Samuel L. Jackson. That's sort of how he's evolved over time, you know, but like he is not Samuel L. Jackson in this. Like it's sort of a reminder of how he became Samuel L. Jackson, like the great actor. He is freaking awesome in this. Kevin Hart is awesome in this. Don Cheadle is like all these actors who, you know, became famous for a reason and then ended up starring in a bunch of Marvel movies, right? Like they became famous for a fucking reason, and you are reminded why when you watch this. And I just think it's really interesting. It's fun, but just to let listeners know, if you haven't checked it out, it is intense and there's a lot of shooting. Just to be clear, there's shooting in this, and it's not a violence-free for children thing that you want to watch here, but it is fun. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. There was a surprise runner in last week's half marathon in Newfoundland. When the pack made its way past Taylor's Pumpkin Patch in Conception Bay South, Joshua the goat slipped his harness and followed along. Joshua is used to people and has never run away, but his curiosity got the best of him. His owner didn't learn his goat was on the lam until it was all over Facebook. Joshua trotted along with the runners for 2.5 kilometers before the farmer caught up with him, and the two walked the last kilometer to the finish line. Other runners didn't mind the late entry contestant, and some said they used the four-legged jogger to set their own pace. By the time Joshua made it, he'd already become a viral sensation. Organizers presented the goat with a medal and have asked him to come back next year, this time as the marathon's mascot. Joshua is already living the life of a local celebrity. He's going to drop the puck at the next Renegades hockey game. So panel, now that Joshua has completed a half marathon, what will this ambitious goat do next? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
I think he's going to Disney World.
Toby Ball, what do you think this ambitious goat is going to do next?
I think he's getting together with his goat friends and subtly dropping that he just ran a half marathon.
You know how you know someone ran a half marathon, Toby?
You don't have to.
Don't worry,
tell you.
Yeah, tell you exactly. Yeah.
What do you think, Kevin? What's Joshua going to do next?
He's going to get one of those oval 13.3 stickers and put it on the back of his fur.
Yeah, probably.
Or, not fur. What do they have? Wool?
Yeah.
Put it on his ass?
Yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you on Twitter or Instagram or anywhere else to say hi, how can they find you online?
They can find me at Laura Bricker or at the Sasquatch Festival in upstate New York.
Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you and say hi, how can you be found online?
I'm at TobyBallNH on TikTok and Twitter, and at TobyBall603 on Instagram.
Kevin, if folks want to hear about your last half marathon, how can they find you?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to hear about how I have not gone to the gym, you can find me at Reb Lavoie all over social media. You can also join us in our incredible Facebook discussion group. It really is fun. Everyone there is great. Find us on Facebook, and there's a pinned post there on how to join the group. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia, and you'll get everything else we make back there as well. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the terrific Livy Burdett. Executive producer of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where all our party guests also strip down to their underwear at gunpoint. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
It's called Empire City.
Isn't it called Empire City with a colon?
Well, yeah, I got to look up that now, okay? It's all right. Sorry, Olivia. Okay.
In Crime Media.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.